Welcome to Lighten Up, the art of living clutter-free, the podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together, starting now. Welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the art of living clutter-free. I'm Melanie, your host. This is the place where we talk all things clutter, physical and mental. And today we're going to talk about both. I have a special guest with me. Here is Majo McCorkingdale. I'm going to read a little bio and then I'm going to just let Majo take over. Majo is a textile artist who transforms memories into hand-woven wall hangings, weaving together textiles, history, and artistry. With a deep respect for the emotional weight of clothing and textiles in general, Majo deconstructs and reimagines meaningful materials, creating pieces that honor personal stories. Rooted in sustainability and a passion for repurposing, her work challenges fast consumption, instead celebrating the beauty of slow, intentional craft. Based in New York City, Majo has also led workshops on weaving and textile transformation, guiding others in reconnecting with their own materials and memories. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. Listeners should know that we met at a Women in Business meeting in our neighborhood. Remember, New York City is a big place with all these really great kind of nooks and crannies and neighborhoods where people actually know each other. So I loved meeting you because I had just launched the podcast like weeks before. And when I heard what you did, I knew that there were multiple reasons to have you come on the show. Tell us a little bit about the journey to becoming the artist that you are today.
Wow, that journey has been so long and it has taken so many weird turns. I've always loved working with textiles. I'm a very tactile person and I've always just enjoyed touching things. And I started knitting when I was a kid. My grandmother taught me how to knit, and I have always have this curiosity about clothing. And I'm very particular about how clothing feels. And that has led me to teach myself how to make my own clothing. And I still do. I mend my clothes, I mend my kids' clothes. And I've always been someone who makes things, who just loves making things. But I never considered myself an artist. I feel like I was told a lot as a kid, you are this, you are this. And I believed these things about myself. Not just that, but I let them put me in a box, like, because you can be many things. Just because you're one way doesn't mean you can't be other ways. So most of my life, textiles was just things I did when I had free time, and being creative was something that I just did on the weekends or in the evenings. And when I had kids, there was this deep, every time they outgrew clothing, every time I had to get rid of their clothing, live in New York, there's no room to keep everything. I mean, you're just going to drive yourself crazy if you keep absolutely everything. But then, particularly as babies, as they outgrow things, what do you do with them? There are things that are in good shape and you can pass them down. There are things that hold deep personal meaning, say a christening gown, somebody's gift, a special occasion thing, and you might hold on to one or two. But sometimes there's like this one item, the monkey pajamas that you just thought were adorable, and they're stained, and maybe even ripped. They're in terrible shape. Nobody's going to want them, but they break your heart when when they just can't fit in them anymore. And what do you do with that? Is that a dish rag? Is that like a dusting rag? No. So it was really hard to get rid of these items. And that question kind of lingered with me for a long time. What do you do? And this question kept coming up. What do I do with these things? What do I do with these things? I got rid of, I donated what I could. I held on to a handful of good items. But as every season, every change of the closet, the question came back up. And I don't know if everybody finds it this painful, but I found it physically painful to go. I still do, to go through these pieces of clothing, and not just clothing, almost everything, and decide what to keep, what to let go of as we stop using them or as we don't need them anymore. And one day I was working a job that was just beating me to the ground. I was working as director of operations for a nonprofit, and I loved the work the nonprofit did, but the work was just beating me to the ground. It was not a good fit. I understand that now, but it was just the way my brain works, the way that space worked, the way it was just, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't doing well, I was not able to spend time with my family, working early, working late. And I decided to do something for myself just to try to like regain that mental peace. And I went to a workshop at Fab Scrap. I don't know if you know about Fab Scrap, or do you want to know now? Fab Scrap is this wonderful organization. It's located in Philly and in Brooklyn. They recycle textiles, they recycle dead stock in particular. It is a great place where you can buy things off the rack that are from fashion houses. They're things that they've like samples and things like that. It's the mendable pile. Things usually have holes or like things that are haven't finished being sewn. But I have found some of my favorite pieces of clothing there. And then there's the scraps, which are fabulous, all kinds of like really, really fun scraps. And then there's things on bolts from fashion houses, things that they're not going to use. And instead of going into a landfill, they go to Fab Scrap. And they also sort and recycle a lot of things. I think a lot of them end up in automotive industry, like the things that get shredded, the inside of between car doors. So I just love that place. They do a lot of things regarding textile recycling. So it is fantastic, and you can volunteer, and the quality of the fabric you can find for the prices you can find it. It's just really fun for anybody who likes to sew or make things with textiles. So I went to a workshop there, and it was how to weave using fabric scraps and cardboard. And as someone who sews, I always have a lot of fabric scraps. So I went and I took that workshop and made like something really tiny, and it was also very ugly, but I loved it. I loved the process. I had so much fun in it, and it was with scraps that they provided. So there was no connection to memory or any kind of sentimental connection. It was just fabric scraps that they had. What can you create with that? And it was so fun. It was just amazing. And then the following day, after having taken a breather, I decided to quit my job that same day. Tuesday, I took the workshop. Wednesday, I'm breathing more freely. And I'm like, I need to make a big change. I might have to quit this job. And then at work, I broke my ankle. I had already made the decision. You didn't really need to push it and force me to do this. I had
Right.
already decided. Oh, I quit. I gave notice 2 days later because first I was like, wait, what's happening with my ankle? So I gave notice, and I had to work the notice remotely because this place didn't have an elevator and I couldn't take the stairs, and it was just working remote was not an option. So until forced to work remotely.
Well, there's that.
Right? And then because I was in such bad shape after this job, I decided to take a little bit of time to decide my next move. And in that moment of time, I was talking to my therapist, and she was like, well, what are you going to do next? And I was like, I don't know. I took this workshop and I really enjoyed weaving. Maybe I'm going to weave clothing. Clothing, yes. So that's kind of where it came in. That clothing that had always called to me, all those pieces that I didn't want to let go. And I just was like, I pulled it out of thin air at that moment. And she was like, oh, wow, that sounds cool. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I did. I had not kept most of these items. I had let go of most of them. And then I had like that pain of like, how do I recover some of these? How do I do this? And I needed someone to allow me to practice on them. So I reached out to friends, and everybody was like, oh, wow, what's that going to look like? And I was like, I can't tell you. It's in my head, but I can't tell you. But if you trust me, I will show you. So that's how I started. I started with friends trusting me with their precious things so that I could have enough to show. Because every time I tell people what I do, they're like, oh, wow, that sounds really cool. And then when they see it, they're like, oh, because it doesn't look like what they think it's going to look like. It does not look like clothing on the wall at all. But when you know these articles and these pieces intimately, you can recognize them. So they're meaningful for the person, but for others, it's just a beautiful thing on the wall. It's an interesting conversation starter. It's something that you can see daily and be reminded of all these memories that you have associated with all these individual pieces.
Oh my God, I have a million things to say now. That's also beautiful. That's also beautiful. Thank you. Like, no one can tell a story like the person who's living it and breathing it. So, for those out there listening or watching right now, I am going to be putting the links in the show notes to her Instagram, because not only are there beautiful pictures of what you've created, but you've also made videos, which I think is amazing, because when you're talking about taking fabric, turning it into yarn or thread, and then weaving it into something that looks completely different, for many of us, it's lost in translation when we hear someone saying it. So I need you to look at this stuff, because it is absolutely incredible what you create. So you made me think of something. One, New Yorkers do not have storage space. That doesn't mean New Yorkers don't get themselves storage space. The amount of people that are carrying offsite storage is like incredibly high. And I think about like my own baby stuff, because I grew up in a very large apartment on the Upper West Side. My parents had storage space, but when they split and my mother was on welfare the first, few years after my dad left, and she was living in a 1 bedroom brownstone apartment and tried to take as much as she could. One of the things that she took was a trunk, and I loved this trunk. Someone made it for me when I was born. They took a steamer trunk and they painted it white with red hearts, and it was beautiful. And I had it for years and years. It was a toy chest. It was like a doll chest. It was like everything. And when I had my baby shower, my mom brought that trunk to California, where I had my first daughter, and she had individually wrapped all this clothing. It became embarrassingly boring for everybody there, because like every article of clothing was individually wrapped with a story written about it. And so it was very special for me, and it was very special for everybody there, until a certain point where you could see eyes like glazing over. And I love that I have all those things. I mean, it was amazing. And so my older daughter wore some of the things that had been made for me by my grandmother and my aunts, who all sewed and knitted and crocheted and all the things. I never learned how to do any of that stuff. And then my younger daughter wore whatever, made it. And just last week, we were doing some reorganizing, and we pulled out have like one of those plastic bags that like you get a comforter in.
Hmm.
I have two of them, and they're both filled with kids stuff. I was pulling it out because someone was wearing a sweater that had those like crochet blocks
Hmm.
all, knit together. It's like a thing now, but I had so many little dresses and vests that my grandmother had made out of them, that I was like, you're bringing it back. This is not anything new. And as I was going through it, I actually pulled some sweaters and things out that were rough. Like, why am I saving baby sweaters that like the yarn is itchy and whatnot? Like, do I need to hang on to this stuff? They're in donation bags, but I might have to save them for a special project from a weaver that I know. But as I was going through everything, I realized that I had kept so much less than my mother had, which both felt good and bad, like all at the same time. So there are things that I'm gonna hold on to. Hopefully, there are grandchildren in my future. I don't know with these two.
But you say with sweaters that are itchy, that are like from so long ago, you're like, nobody's gonna wear this. But there was one piece that I did that included baby clothes 3 generations. And some of it were pieces that they were so old and they were washed and all. They put them on the baby from 3 years ago, and the baby broke into a rash. I don't know what kind of synthetic material it was that we would, and now we don't do those things, but it was fabulous for ripping it apart and weaving with it. And
Was this the one that you made, and it had those blankets that we all know, because that blanket comes from the hospital? It's a white blanket with the blue and the pink stripes on it. Like everyone has at least one or two in the house. But that was one of the things that I really loved watching, that you showed on that video, the garments folded on a blanket, and you making the yarn out of it and you weaving, etc. And what I love about that is that as unique as everything is that is in there, there's also something that is very not unique, that is not uniform, but is like everyone is aligned with this fabric that you have made because everybody sees something in it that everybody who's ever had a
Yeah.
baby in the last 50 or 60 years, however long it's been, has one of those blankets. I really loved that piece that made it kind of universal and unique at the same time. Okay, the other thing that you made me think of was about not having perceived yourself as a quote unquote artist. And so I wonder, is that something that held you back from discovering this sooner or employing some other form of art? What do you think?
No, I think it probably did because I think I wouldn't have dared to sooner. I feel like it's taken me a long time to really get comfortable in my own skin and really dare to be me. I wish I could quote exactly because I don't remember where I heard this exactly, but I know it was Brene Brown. And it said something about like we're at our most powerful when we're doing what only we can do.
Right.
So for a long time, when my kids were very, very little, and before that, so I've had a very all over the place kind of path, and
Just so you know,
I
those are the people that I like the best because I feel like I've been also on this very circuitous path getting to where I am today.
I know
100%.
I've been thinking of that word, but I haven't said it because I keep thinking I want to mispronounce it.
We would have
Everyone,
known what you meant.
yes. So I studied philosophy. I started studying physics and switched to philosophy. Then worked in languages for a long time. Then I wrote a book, which I never published, and I don't want published. It was something that I needed to write. And then I worked as a bookkeeper for a long time. I ended up working like as a bookkeeper for artists. And because I got along well, understood the way they thought, could get it done, I had always thought I'll work as a bookkeeper for a while and then I'll like do what I really want to do, whatever that is. It was supposed to be something to help me out in the meantime. And I did a lot of side things for a while, but then after doing it for a long time, it just became very unsatisfying. And that's kind of where it came the thing that only I can do. What are my unique powers? What are the things that only I can do? Not that nobody else can weave. Yes, many people can weave. And yes, many people could also take clothing and weave them, but the way that person's going to do it is going to be different from the way I'm going to do it. What I create is uniquely mine, and each piece is completely one of a kind. Not just that, but I have a series which I have to post about. I'm so behind in posting. I go through periods in which I don't feel like posting, like I'm weaving, but I'm like the posting world is kind of like a different world from the creating world.
100%.
So I took the same 6 articles of clothing from my parents and one piece of yarn from my grandmother. And I have made so far 3 completely different pieces, and they are dramatically different. So anybody else who grabs these 3 things can make completely different things. So that's kind of, I think, until I became comfortable with the idea that what matters the most is doing what only I can do. If other people can do it, let other people do it. They'll find it satisfying.
Beautiful. And I love the leaning into your unique powers, creating unique items, and even that different items coming from the same source can be, so different. Talk to me about sustainability, because that's one of the things that's really important to me. I've mentioned several times so far this year that I set a goal of getting my wardrobe to the point where it's about 75% secondhand thrift, hand me downs, whatever it is that and I have been a thrift shopper before thrifting was a thing. Back in the 80s, my friends and I did a lot of thrift shopping. My goal was always to find a bowling shirt or like the guys that worked the gas pumps. So that it was like, it would say like so and so's bowling league. And like the goal was to find one that said like Jimmy Joe Bob or something like that. That's what I was looking for. And I love to tell a story about the fact that I also really wanted like old man cardigans, like old ones. And I was in a thrift shop and there was a dollar bin and it was old man cardigans. And I saw color blue that I loved and I had to have, and I pulled and it wasn't coming out. I figured it was like, knotted with something else. And then I look up and there's a gentleman across from me pulling on the other sleeve of the same sweater. And the man was Kevin Bacon. Um,
Wow.
who let me have the sweater, by the way. But anyway, so like thrifting has always been a part of who I am, but it was because I was looking for the uniqueness in something. I was looking for something different and vintage and something that would be uniquely my own. And now thrifting is very much that, but it is also very much save the planet. Oh my God, there are way too many stores where there's something new there every week, encouraging us to buy some new fast fashion when there's so much stuff already here. And then the other piece for me is just that thrill of the find, especially when it's dirt cheap. And so it is so important to me. So I'm on my way towards the 75%. I'd say right now I'm somewhere around 50% of what I have. I will always buy new when it comes to underwear and bras, shoes, shirts, pants, bags, jewelry, that I feel like I'm doing a really good job with that. And how amazing when there are artisans out there who are saving the planet while creating beautiful art. So talk to me from the sustainability factor of what you're making.
So I've always been very conscious of what you're mentioning. Not just so much, not just the thrifting aspect. I also love thrifting. And not just, my favorite thing is not just thrifting in thrift stores, but hand-me-downs. Actually, this came from a neighbor on the sixth floor.
Shirts from my neighbor around the corner.
Exactly, exactly. And I grew up with hand-me-downs from relatives. It was just the best. It's new to me. And I have taught my kids to love thrifting. My kids' stuff is usually not that easy to find, but dresses, I can make them smaller. If there's extra fabric, I can just make it a little smaller, and then, resizing works. And I've always been just very conscious of how much garbage we produce and where is all this garbage going. And there is such a problem with needing new, and I'm not just talking about clothing, but everything. And I think the more we reuse, the better we'll all be. So reusing and repurposing in particular are things that I think are very important. And that's part of why where the idea of keeping these things comes from, because many of the things that, for example, those scratchy sweaters we were talking about, if no one is going to buy them, they'll end up in a landfill. A lot of the things that are thrift stores, like things that are not bought, end up in landfills. And when I bumped into weaving and I loved it, I started looking at all these beautiful things that people are creating. But they're creating, most of them are working with virgin materials, with new materials. And yes, I have a lot of yarn in this house of knitting, and I've gotten cut up here and there, but I make sure that I use it. But the idea of even more, buying more to create more, if I want to make more, it just doesn't make sense to me. The idea of repurposing and of taking what we have and, if needed, transform it. If you want to decorate your walls, do we need to go buy something new? No. Maybe there are things already in your house that can be transformed, and it could be both meaningful and beautiful, because that's the other thing that led me to create this. It's that there are things like this that exist for preserving memories of people use it a lot for t-shirts, for example, those memory quilts. But personally, I don't find them as aesthetically appealing. Sometimes they're just a little obvious, like particularly if you're like keeping the logos and stuff like that. And it's great depending on what you're using it for. I like the idea, but I'm afraid that if I were to do that, it would end up in a closet. And I didn't want to like put it away again. I wanted something that you could enjoy and see every day.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you take something that doesn't serve its purpose anymore, if you look at it in different ways, if you deconstruct it and reconstruct it, you can give it new life. So instead of going into a landfill, it becomes something beautiful that you can enjoy again and even pass down to others.
You made me think of something else when you were talking about needing to replace things, about like how many people get a new car every 3 years, or new when the lease is up, or every time Apple drops a new product, we have to get the brand new version when Like the one I have is working perfectly. Like, do I need to replace everything on like a schedule as opposed to when it's really necessary to do that? I know that everyone like has a thing, like that's the thing they want to collect. And for some people, it could be associated with, I know someone who collects perfume bottles and she has this beautiful, exquisite collection. We've gone through many collections in our house, but usually when we're collecting something, there is meaning behind it so that when the collection gets out of control, it's really hard to let those things go. But knowing that something is important is not just because we can touch it and feel it, but just by looking at it, it has an impact on us, whether it's positive memories, or maybe it drudges up some negative memories also, but seeing in its new form, becomes something very special. So what I want to know, especially since we see a hand in the background every once in a while, so we know that someone is joining us. And for those of you who are listening, there's a little hand that I assume belongs to an 8-year-old in the background every once in a
Yes.
while. Help, or do they want to help with the art? Like, how do they feel about the weaving?
So it's interesting. They have not learned how to weave. They are mildly curious. I have offered, but they've never taken me up on it. But when it's time to go through the closets and like every few months when it's seasonal time, whenever there's no, this doesn't fit anymore. No, this is not in great shape. When we're selecting things, we separate into things to donate and things that are going to become art. So they have been very enthusiastic with the idea of like this will become art. And because I didn't keep the the baby things, what I've been since I started this journey, I've been collecting the items that are meaningful to us now or in the past few years to make one for them. So they've been active participants in selecting, okay, this is going to be art. Okay. All right, sure, that doesn't fit anymore. I'm letting go of the tiny yellow mud stained shorts, but they'll become art.
I love that. I love that. I'm sure that they're learning great things from you when it comes to sustainability, like the amount of money that we spend thinking that we need, jeans in every shape, or we need shirts in every color. And, so one of the things that always gets me into trouble is I love prints. But when you're trying to limit your wardrobe every once in a while, you're like, oh, can I wear those pink polka dots with the orange and white stripes? Yeah, probably. And your necklace, I love your necklace. For any of you that are not watching, there's something very Prue, I can't remember her last name from the Great British Baking Show. It's Prue Leaf is her name.
Here,
Cool necklace.
I pretty much wear it every day because regardless of what I'm wearing,
It matches.
I consider red a neutral color.
Like I consider purple a neutral color.
So if I am wearing monochromes as I am today,
Uh-huh.
I will wear the colorful side.
I love this.
And if I'm wearing prints, then I wear the red side.
Okay, so is this something you purchased or you made?
I purchased it.
And
And I've been
so,
wanting to make something similar.
mm,
I have an idea for making something similar, but haven't had time to explore how to make what's in my head. But having this necklace has kept me from buying more necklaces. Like I love necklaces, and I have a small collection. It's not a ton,
uh-huh.
but whenever I'm about to buy one, I'm like, would I wear this instead of that? When would I wear it? Sometimes when I'm tempted to get new things, I try to think of when I would wear it and what it would replace. Would I actually prefer this or that? And if it doesn't top this, then why bother?
Right.
So sometimes it would top it because there are circumstances in which I wouldn't wear this in either side. Great. Then it's a necklace that has a place in my life. It's really more about seeing like what place does this have in my life? Not just do I love it, because we might love many things, but what place does this have in my life? Like fabulous gown, even if it fits amazing, or high heels. Let's say high heels. Oh my God, they're amazing and they fit. What place do they have in my life? Mine, me who cannot stand high heels for more than a minute. No, no place in
Well,
my life.
I used to love wearing high heels, and then the pandemic happened, and now I could put them on, but I can't spend a long period of time in them for sure not.
I had kept one pair that I loved because I was like, oh, maybe I'll wear them to a wedding or something. And then I tried, and I kept it for years, maybe 10 years. And it was the last pair I had held on to. And then I put them on and everything hurt. And I was like, I'm not gonna have fun if I wear these to a wedding. I mean, other people might wear them. I mean, it's not like I'm not talking about against, hey, in my personal life, I cannot wear heels. I will not wear heels. Therefore, heels have no room in my closet.
Hear you. I love the way they look. I love how they elongate my
Yes.
leg. I love how when I'm wearing them, I'm no longer 5'3", I'm 5'6" or 5'7" or whatever it is. Like I love that, but I don't know that my feet love it enough for me to be doing that anymore. No,
It's not just my feet, my knees, my hip, my back.
100%. Oh no, I hear you. So what art would you make out of shoes then?
What art would I make? Oh, I would
You
totally,
set yourself up.
absolutely. So it would depend on the shoe, but I would totally either cut the straps if they have straps or cut into thin straps. Like if there's like leather, I mean, leather is
Right.
so pliable.
Yeah.
And there's also shoes that might have like little embellishments, like little flowers or things. I would also just remove those. If there's like a collection of stilettos, you know what I would do? I would drill holes in the backs of the stilettos in the bottom. So it's a triangle, right? In the top. And then I would thread them so that that's like the fringe in the bottom
I love the idea. Are there fabrics that you haven't been able to use, or is like everything usable?
into something I cannot use. I'm not saying that there isn't anything. Everything has been a matter of figuring out how to use it. I have had a lot of fun with all kinds of different materials, and different materials behave differently depending on how you cut them. So I have worked with wedding dresses, which means like satiny things with tulle, with lace. I've also worked with sweaters.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. If you're listening now, you need to like hit pause, drop everything, go to Majo's Instagram so you can see the piece of art that she made out of a wedding dress. It would blow your mind. It's beautiful, it's exquisite. You can see how much the bride loved what you created. But, for those of us who have, a preserved wedding dress in our closet because we think our kids might want to wear it someday. My kids don't want my wedding dress. And in all fairness, I don't know where it is now. It like went home with someone else, and so they may have tossed it by now. But I got married in 1995. No one's wearing that dress today. Now, I could imagine it getting torn apart, put back together with other things, and creating something beautiful and more timeless out of it. But I don't need to be hanging on to such a large garment in a New York City apartment. So you did great on that one, my friend.
Really enjoyed working on that. Other things that have been very interesting to take apart have been like sweaters, because machine made sweaters.
Different than if my
Because
grandmother had knitted.
hand knit sweaters are really fun to frog, like to destroy and turn them into actual yarn. But then machine knit sweaters, it's like it's very hard to find how to do that. And because they're like, I don't know how it works, how they're actually made, but the seams, they have seams on the sides. It would be this long, the piece, each like string. So it doesn't really work. So I've done something completely different, which creates an enormous amount of mess, but basically I'm treating it like t-shirts so that it's thicker, it stays knit, and it just gives it such wonderful texture. I love working with sweatshirts. Sweatshirts just give the yummiest texture on the inside. The inside is often what ends up showing the most, depending on how it's cut. Sweatshirts have those like, well, depending on the kind of sweatshirt, but there's a specific kind of sweatshirt that has like almost like the terry cloth ones that have like tiny loops. Those look amazing. Work with like velvet and like silky things and t-shirt material.
It's because, I think a lot of people take their clothing for granted. For those of us who had, I mean, my grandmother was an expert seamstress, and she knit, she crocheted, she did needlepoint. Like there wasn't a medium for producing clothing and items that she didn't do. And like I said, I never learned how to do any of those things. And through no fault of like my mother or anybody, I was a competitive gymnast growing up. I trained 4 or 5 hours a day. There was no time for things like that. Do I regret some of it? Sure. But I also know my patience level. I don't think anybody should put a pair of needles in my hands. But anyway, I say this on my "We're going to remove all the mental clutter" show. But the thing that I get from it is that there are people out there who don't care about clothing, Like I have a cousin. She's like, I wore this shirt 3 days in a row. And I'm like, oh, but I have so many shirts to wear. But some of us really do love our clothing. And, I love, and I talk about this all the time. I'm not a minimalist. I don't help people become minimalist unless that's what they ask for, because I love color. I love patterns. I love mixing patterns and textures and all the things. And so that makes things important to me, just as long as they have good energy, they fit. Because if they don't fit, they need to be let go. If it no longer has good energy or it's really stained or something, my clothing goes through a journey, and I wear it every day, and it becomes stained or ripped. It becomes pajamas. After pajamas, maybe it gets turned into a rag. Maybe it gets used for another thing, or it goes to textile recycling, which people should know. Textile recycling is different from regular recycling. And there is textile recycling in every town and city. You just have to do a little bit of research, or you can hire someone really amazing like Majo to create this wonderful product. So there are two things we have to do before we finish up. And one is that I have a question that I ask everybody on the show, because some of the people who come on my show have a lot of clutter, and some of the people who come on the show don't have any clutter, but I challenge with the question, what is your clutter?
I've been discussing this with my family lately a lot.
Mm,
And I've been going through a very intense round of decluttering lately. My clutter right now, my own, is all the things I'm keeping to make art. Sometimes I go so far with the decluttering that I get rid of things and I'm like, oh no, I should not have. Like that happens to me a lot because sometimes I am very quick to dismiss things and
sure.
then I regret it. But right now, what's bugging me down, I used to be fairly close to a minimalist, and then I had kids. And doesn't mean that everything goes, it just means that we have to work on it together. But it is physically and emotionally very hard for both them and for me. It's very taxing and
Yeah.
draining.
Yeah.
So the clutter that we need to work on right now is the toy
Toys.
and maybe book clutter. I don't know. We have a lot of books in this house.
Well, this will give me an opportunity to reference back. I'm not sure yet when your episode is going to drop, but the April 4th episode is all about book clutter. So that's a great one to listen to. So I'm not going to get into the details of what I would do with books, but I think that it's about setting precedents. And I mean, my kids had way more toys than they needed. The pictures and videos of their childhood show that. If I could go back in time, I certainly would have done things very differently, which would have saved money on top of, all the other things. And I realized, man, I spent a lot of money on things they really didn't need. But for some reason, as a parent, like we have to give. And I think it's really beautiful when you can also get your kids to wrap their brains around, well, maybe there's someone who could use this more. I have enjoyed this. Maybe there's someone new. And that's why I love things like the buy nothing groups. You don't have to go buy new toys for your kid. There's someone else who's getting rid of something. And I think you used the words before, new to you. It's new to
Yes.
your child.
And that's something that I lean into when trying to get rid of things. If you're not using something at the moment, you can always get it again later. You can always find it again, whether free and buy
Exactly.
nothing. But right now, this thing is languishing in the back of a shelf, a closet, unused, while someone else could be using it so that they don't have to buy something new.
Yes, yes, yes. This is what I communicate on a regular basis. Is like how stressful clutter can be.
There is a cost associated with having too much stuff.
Yes.
It is, and kind of like, it's not just like, oh, I don't want to get rid of it. It's like not getting rid of things costs you. So yes, sometimes we get rid of 10 and then realize we have to buy one back
Mhm.
later because we're like, oh yeah, I did end up needing that stuff. It's you're still doing better than if you have kept all the things.
You make me think of something that I talk about a lot, and that is like the cost of things and the cost of time, because there's some like crazy studies, research shows that like we spend nearly a year of our lives looking for lost items. And like I know it looks for, but like for me now as a woman in menopause, it's more like I can't find my glasses. Where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? And this has nothing to do with clutter. Oh, and for those of you listening, I put my glasses on my head, and I know you've all put your glasses on your head before and haven't been able to find them. But how many times have I gone looking for the keys because I didn't put them back where they were supposed to be kept?
Yes,
I don't want to finish my life thinking, wow, I wasted a lot of time looking for
I
things.
know. But that's the thing. If everything has its place, then you find everything easily.
So all of your contact information is going to be in the show notes, and I have to tell all of you, you're just going to be so impressed when you get to Majo's Instagram account and you look at both the pictures of what she's created, watch some of the videos. It really is a reminder that we can give things a second life or a new life, and it just everything that you do fits in so well with what I hope to communicate with the Lighten Up podcast. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I hope you found a spark of inspiration to help declutter not just your space, but your mind and life as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lightness in their life. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress. Small steps lead to big changes, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. For more tips, resources, and ways to connect, check out my website, follow me on social media, and don't forget to check out the Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program to take your transformation even further. Until next time, keep letting go of what no longer serves you and making room for what truly lights you up.